And now we go on to Brooklyn, New York, and we get to introduce Kai Naima Williams, another creative who is keeping this story alive. Kai is a poet, spoken word performer, fiction writer, and co-founder and executive director of Eat at the Table Theater Company. She'll read a new piece of poetry and reflect on the revolutionary legacy of her great-grandmother, Yuri Kochiyama. Please drop some love in the chat for Kai.
Hi everybody, my name is Kai. I'm so excited to be joining you for Densho's Dinner at Home. You know, this is a difficult time to be writing poetry in, particularly poetry that references such a painful history for many of our families. My own family were incarcerated at Jerome, Arkansas and Topaz, Utah. I like to think about writing about harm done to our communities as touching the wound. To write about pain, you have to access the pain and allow yourself to go directly to the center of that pain. So when I sat down to write this poem for Densho, I found myself returning to the wound of our history of concentration camps while simultaneously living with the currently open wound of the present. The pain of this year as we've watched police murder of Black people arise to the national spotlight yet again, and seen resistance met with heinous state violence. And I'm a Japanese and Black person, so it is a discouraging experience, to say the least, to carry both wounds, to struggle with the past, knowing it is the precedent for the present, and that the present is simply a continuum of the past, and that in all the time in between, institutions of harm, white supremacy, systemic racism have continued to functionally oppress, marginalize, imprison, and murder all resident people of color in the United States, but particularly Black and Indigenous peoples. The timelessness of our struggle is exhausting. Some of you may be familiar with my great-grandmother, Yuri Kochiyama. Yuri was a civil rights leader, and although she was radicalized in Harlem, her experience in the camps awakened her to the fact that regardless of her birthright as a Nisei and thus a citizen, she would always be seen as foreign, as an other, and not a true American in the eyes of the state. And later, Yuri would come to understand that the United States government actively and effectively works to quell any perceived threat to systemic racism and the status quo of white supremacy. And this realization incentivized Yuri to learn about the ways that racism targeted other groups of people and to take up their civil rights causes. And her work always highlighted the connections between groups of people who did not suffer identical issues of oppression, but did share a common oppressor. And I mention Yuri here to say that making connections between past and present, between one wound and another, is a way that we see a larger picture of harm and potentially a way forward. I grew up in a family of artists and activists, so I was always taught what a powerful tool imagination is in envisioning what a better world might look like, what a better future might feel like, and what efforts we might make to get there. And that envisioning, that dream work, is the theme of this poem. It's called Radical Imagination, and it begins with a quote from Mumia Abu-Jamal, who was a dear friend of my great-grandmother's as well. So this is Radical Imagination. Conventional wisdom would have one believe that it is insane to resist this, the mightiest of empires. But what history really shows us is that today's empire is tomorrow's ashes, that nothing lasts forever. In this, our new country, I gather my children, say, how lucky you are to grow up out of ashes. We have buried all the emperors for you to play with your cousins on the grass their bodies give, the only thing they had to offer the earth in the end. For you to run free through prairies, hills, forests, and fields that belong to none of us. Because in this country, we sidestepped the grave error of etching our names onto everything with its own language. Instead, we let the land break our tongues over its own pronunciation. This time, the land tells us how we can be of use, and we train our ears to receive. And that was just the first decree. In this, our new country, where it is not a crime to come from somewhere else, and citizenship is granted upon reenactment of one's most beloved proverb, since every other is part of one another, blended harmony standing out in a national anthem. And you could be a bended knee, or raised fist, or palm over heart, since in this country, we mind our own business. Don't tell nobody how to move against the swell of song. In the old empire, they labeled us poison while letting the life out of water, isolated us like illness in the body they drew us into, a body they invaded first and claimed to have came to consciousness inside. They constellated the land with confinements, cut fences and clamped circles around whole demographics, from the knowingest grandmother to the freshest son, who never got the chance to be both alive and young enough not to be hated by his country. They shut us into camps, having concentrated their eyes on our entire lives, registered our birthdays. They took fishermen for spies, then handed them back to our families broken into scales. They swiped our language and left only bare skeletons of folk tales. They closed us into prisons, while plantations stayed open for white people to throw weddings on. They closed in on us at protests and beat us open over and over, as if to beat their obsession, blood, taste for blackness out into as many bodies that weren't theirs as their batons could touch. And I know it may be irresponsible to use the word we, presumptuous pronoun us, in a poem, but this is a country, and we made us a possibility, an even plane, a wilderness of differences with the same height, the same healthcare, the same rights, the same blood, the same children, and I am an us, a mixture of countries and blood that met as comrades and created the same children. My ancestors come to my candle, whisper. We suffer different beneath the same rule, but our resistances rub shoulders, and the shared muscle is you. They told me that, so I could tell you, my children. We have burned it all down for you. There are no prisons, only gardens, no wardens, only women with an eye on your progress as you make it home late at night. There are no cops, just your girls running up to form a chain, just witches aiming to twist up a perp's name in their mouths. There are no reservations, only free feast programs running from coast to coast. No cages, just open bars for boarders to mingle with hosts. We have every reason to toast the grand old wizards of convention, because they were so wrong. We, the natives, survived the end they promised would never come, and we marched on at some point with our backs turned. The past entombed itself in glass, renamed itself history. We thought their war on us would always last, but here you are, blessed progeny of protest, anointed with ash, uprising every dawn.